Greetings and welcome to the first episode of That's All for This Week. Thank Dubsy Dweller for the name, by the way, where we look at some of the stories suggested by you guys, the audience, so if this all goes off the rails, I'm blaming you lot. And if it goes well, it's because I'm a good writer. It's a heads I win, tails you lose sort of scenario. I'm being facetious, of course. So, first up, this bizarre story of the Spanish president, Pedro Sanchez, who presented a Spain 2050 strategic plan on modernizing Spain in the next 30 years. Again, I find it very unusual when you have presidents making plans for their country when it vastly exceeds their presidential term by several decades. Not only are they not going to be around in 30 years, the idea that anyone knows what the economic landscape will be 30 years from now is laughable. You think anyone in the 1980s knew what e-commerce would look like by 2010? High-speed internet, phone use, social media? No, of course not. This exercise in strategic foresight seeks to improve the understanding of the social, economic, and environmental challenges and opportunities that the country will face in the coming decades. Now, given how piss-poor the world leaders, quote-unquote, have fared in handling the coup, the idea that politicians have any kind of strategic foresight is one of the funniest things I have ever heard. They already screw up the present. Strategic foresight from a politician has all the credibility of a schizophrenic telling you they had brunch with Satan. But the phrase that caught me there is environmental challenges. Isn't that interesting? Because if we listen to the likes of AOC and Greta Thunberg, who all have the scientific know-how of a packet of Skittles, the world is going to end in 12 years. But these politicians are making plans well beyond that. One of the positions they are talking about is the potential importance of the job avatar trainer. One that drew particular attention was Minecraft Gardener, the enhancing the appearance of the digital landscape with flora, which makes it sound like we are all going to live in a Fallout bunker hooked up to a world of VR. But that is a world that is powered by energy, electricity. So I have a better idea. How about you get those gamers off their fat asses, go outside into the real world, and actually plant some trees? They get exercise and fresh air, probably for a fair few of them, it'll be the first time in their entire lives. The world becomes greener and it consumes less energy. That is a win-win in every capacity. So next up is Facebook's current debacle with the whistleblower and all. So this story was actually sent to me before it really made the rounds, and I didn't really pay much attention to it, because about 10 seconds in I thought, how is this woman, Frances Hogan, a whistleblower exactly? She wants more censorship, not less. This is an evil person. This was regards to her complaining about the, let's say, task force involved in fortifying the election being dissolved post-election, and she complained that Facebook isn't doing enough to make the digital space cleaner of all of those nasty people that disagree with her deluded view of reality, which I'd guess is why she is receiving so much mainstream attention, because again, the machine will show information that helps the machine, not diminish its power. So the Wall Street Journal claimed that Facebook's newsfeed made some pretty major changes in 2018 that saw its algorithm promote more incendiary and outrageous content on the platform, and the higher-ups allegedly weren't exactly enthusiastic in solving the issue. I imagine they wouldn't be, especially if it's driving revenue. Then we have all of this leaked information, quote-unquote, about the likes of Instagram being damaging to young women. Never mind the fact that young men commit suicide 4 times at the rate of women. No one cares about that, of course, because men are expendable pawns in the world of militant feminists. So to quote the Wall Street Journal, in a series of interviews, Ms. Haugen, who left the company in May after nearly 2 years, said she'd come into the job with high hopes of helping Facebook fix its weaknesses. She soon grew skeptical that a team could make an impact, she said. The team had few resources, she said, and she felt the company put growth and user engagement ahead of what it knew through its own research about its platform's ill effects. Then a quote from The Verge. She noted that she had worked at a number of companies, including Google and Pinterest, but that it was substantially worse at Facebook due to the company's desire to put its profits over the welfare of its users. Yeah, like Google and Pinterest would never do that ever. There was conflict between what was good for the public and what was good for Facebook, Haugen told Pelle, and Facebook chose over and over again to optimize for its own interests, like making money. Okay, this idea that a private company should put the public interest ahead of profit, and it must be interfered with by the state, is a distinctly activist mentality. And by that I'm not defending Facebook's illicit business practices, mind you. I think seeing Zuckerberg lose a lot of money and his fascistic empire come crumbling into dust, that would give me quite the hearty chuckle. But make no mistake, this entire spiel is just to justify more censorship, and she wants left-wingers like herself to hold the reins. No surprise there. Right now, the only people in the world who are trained to analyze these experiments, to understand what is happening inside of Facebook, are people who grew up inside of Facebook or Pinterest, or another social media company. There needs to be a regulatory home where someone like me could do a tour of duty after working at a place like Facebook, and have a place to work on things like regulation, said Haugen. Let me just say, to me, this woman is one of the most arrogant people I have ever come across in my entire life. Think about this. This woman used to work for tech companies before. She thought the issues, and I think everyone knows what she means by that, was the most perverse at Facebook. And she decided to slay the biggest head of the dragon, so to speak, so she went after Facebook. Then, when she didn't get her way, she went to the state and told them, oh, this massive global company isn't working how I want it to, so I should be in charge of regulating it because I know what's best. Bitch, who the fuck are you? The goal of this woman, my word, this isn't anything to do with outing Facebook. This woman is asking for more power in a damn job interview. And according to reports, she's being advised by Whistleblower Aid, which is the same group of leftist lawyers who advised the whistleblowers, quote-unquote, on the BS Ukraine impeachment of Trump, which of course took away attention on the Biden's corruption affairs in the Ukraine, as we recall Joe Biden getting the prosecutor fired for investigating Burisma, the company his son was sitting on, even though he has absolutely no experience in that sector whatsoever. And this woman, and I feel sketchy calling her that because Crowder said she looks like the Predator, and now I can't unsee that, thanks Stephen, she was also involved in suppressing the Biden stories about the laptop's content, which everyone knew was true for a very simple reason. The mainstream media wasn't talking about it. Nowadays, a sure sign there is something truthful to the stories. So next up is something I want to talk about, which is the pathetically embarrassing sketch Stephen Colbert did with the vaccines. And no, don't worry, I won't play the clip. I think the overwhelming cringe might make me facepalm myself into a coma. And yes, I know I've been ragging on late-night talk show hosts. I refuse to call them comedians. That's an insult to people who are actually funny. Keep in mind, there are thousands of people who think what these Hollywood priests peddle is gospel, and as such, they must be mercilessly belittled as the worthless tosspots that they are, so consider this my selfless public service. But no, what I want to discuss is who the hell that entire pathetic piece of cringe was actually aimed at. The audience is probably all pro-vax and vaccinated already, and no sane person on the right is going to be convinced by any of that crap. The funniest headline I saw said, "Watch Stephen Colbert convince the unvaccinated to stay unvaccinated." Apparently this was part of some sinister campaign to keep the Trump voters unvaccinated, which frankly doesn't make any sense to me. Trump supporters are not going to be swayed to do anything after watching that pile of wank other than to mock and ridicule it. Because let's be honest, all of us are going to dismiss it as propaganda, cringe, and gay. Actually, the first thing I thought about, and this was years ago, there was a South Park episode where the school had this pathetic bunch of dweebs show up and do this lame dance routine about the dangers of smoking. And because they were seriously cringe and said, if you don't smoke, you can be just like us, the first thing Stan, Kyle, Kenny, and Cartman do is immediately start smoking. At the end of the episode, the anti-smoking bastards gets chastised for being fascists by using all of their money and power to make everyone do what they want to do. Sound familiar? And instead, people should exercise more personal responsibility. This was in 2003. Let that sink in for a moment. South Park episodes, almost 2 decades ago, had a better grasp on morality than current late-night hosts. That's a little worrying, to say the least, when old South Park episodes become better moral arbiters than the current drivel that passes for entertainment. We definitely made a wrong turn somewhere. And the last thing I want to talk about is this one right here. I would very much like to know what is the cost of her soul and her dignity, because my word, this woman is horrendous at her job. Now, in the least charitable way I can spin it, one can somewhat understand because, again, her boss is Mr. Magoo, who isn't really in charge of anything, puppet on a string, that's set to expire any day now. So given the current set of circumstances and the piss-poor choices the fossil has decided to implement, there is no way in hell this woman can do her job efficiently, because she would have to admit the current administration is the worst in history, and it's not even been a year, which puts her in an unfortunately precarious predicament. On the other hand, you gotta be kidding me. Listen here, you deluded red-headed witch. Your only spell is making common sense disappear every time you speak. Now, if I knew that this moron was going to be an utterly shit show of a useless president, there is no way in hell this woman didn't know what she was getting into. Joe Biden can't even read a damn autocue, and this idiot can't answer the most gentle softball questions ever. These daft gits told the American public, oh, the adults are back in charge. Turns out the adults are old, senile, and stupid. Just look at how many people voted for... Okay, bad example. Tenquit says if you ask Biden right now what's the name of his press secretary, his instinctive reaction would be to look over yonder for a response from the autocue, forget his train of thought, and then mumble something incoherently about ice cream, before we all faintly hear the sound of someone in the background chanting, "Let's go, Brandon." And that's all for this week. Until next week.